Hi, and welcome to another edition of hippoBrain. hippoBrain has been a very interesting journey for us. When Rajesh and me started, I didn't even know how many hippoBrains we really knew and would agree to come on camera. But it's amazing. We've done, I think, 15, 16, 17 episodes, and we're just enjoying ourselves. People ask us, why do you do this? And our answer is very simple. These are conversations we love. Who's your target segment? This we Rajesh and me are very clear. The target segment is first me. I have to enjoy the conversation. Rajesh has to enjoy the conversation. Then the world will figure it out. And coming to target segments, Rajesh, this is a perfect time for you to introduce our guest today.
Hi everyone, welcome to another hippoBrain. Our guest today is Gautam Surath. Gautam has been with Starcom for 15 years. He spent a few years in China. He heads West and South for Starcom. And we're going to start with his journey. Gautam, 2 decades in the media planning business. Tell us about it.
First of all, thank you guys. It's great to be here. I think some of the conversations that I've seen in the past, I'm in elite company and I hope I do justice to this. So very interesting few years in media and not all as per plan. I think I'll be the first one to say that, and maybe come up later in our conversations, that not everybody has very clear plans when they set out in life. And I'm a prime example of that. So barely scraped through my engineering, struggled through it actually, don't know what the purpose was of doing it. So managed to come out of it somehow. Got sent to a thermal power station somewhere deep, dark Tamil Nadu in Neyveli. Spent good 3 years building a boiler there. And then by some fluke of luck, somebody, when I was giving a CAT entrance, somebody applied in an institute called MICA and I landed up in Ahmedabad doing 2 years of, MBA or postgraduate diploma as they called it then. So 2 years there, and I actually couldn't figure out what I wanted to do. So just did not understand brand planning, too many frameworks within frameworks. And then I found media was making sense. And so I opted for that and I landed up at Starcom at the end of that thing. So, but I think landing at Starcom was where the journey took a turn. I think I found a kind of calling there. I really enjoyed the media business. I worked with some brilliant minds. I continue to work with them, and that's the great thing about media. People are there for the long term, and usually it's a very, very small industry. A boss of mine once said there are more tigers in India than media planners. So I think that still remains true. They're a very, very small community, and so I continue to work with them. Did a small stint in China with Starcom itself for about 4 years. Worked with clients who I could not understand for the first 1 year, what they were saying, what language they were using, and things like that. But managed to come out of that pretty well. Thoroughly enjoyed that stint. And then in sometime in 2014, back in India, and then since then now heading this business here. So really that's been my journey. I think the last 1.5 years has been on this business, which is primarily looking after West and South operations. So yeah, that's in quick short summary of my career, I guess.
Gautam, in every hippoBrain conversation, for some reason, it's probably on Rajesh and my head. India versus China. And this is the first time I've got somebody Indian doing media planning and buying in China. So we often say, if I don't understand you, I often say you're speaking Chinese. So tell me, what can we learn about China in media planning?
So I think fantastic country, first of all. I think I lived there for 4 years. In 4 years, you almost become a part of that culture. And I think a lot of assumptions when I went there, and most of them proven false. I think I worked with a team of about 14, 15 people who were reporting into me. They were very hesitant to speak because of language issues. And I think overall, they were very nice enough to welcome me and be a really, really open community to me. But I think also what I learned about that market and the way it works from the complications that are there, I found it so similar to India. And I am really surprised that even to this day, I realize that a lot of the learnings in China are still applicable here and vice versa, because it is in the end 25 provinces, which is similar to India in terms of states. There are dialects for each province as you go from one place to the other. There are publications in each province. So the landscape was very, very similar. And a lot of the learnings that I got from India, I was using there. But also, I think, and something that is very, very interesting from how we look at media is a lesson I learned there. And this happened within the first month I kind of landed there. My client was a Chinese guy who was handling hair care. And my first presentation was an annual strategy within a week of landing there. And I was sweating bricks. I really was. I don't know the people. I don't know how they react. They don't understand English properly. So by the time I landed up there with a 200 slide presentation, as happens in media planning quite often, I was like, okay, this guy is not going to really get anything I say. The guy patiently listened to me for about 200 slides. And then he went up to the board and he looked at me and my colleagues and he said, listen, that's fantastic. You've got lots of information you've given me. Now you tell me this, out of all this, tell me 2 KPIs that I need to track. After that, I don't want anything else. So I told him, after all this, you're asking me for 2 KPIs. So really we discussed and all that and we struggled and we gave him 2 KPIs finally at the end of it because he did not let us go. He just said, till we get these 2 KPIs on this board, I don't want to end this meeting. And so we ended up with those 2 KPIs. And believe me, for the next 2 years working with him, all he tracked was those 2 KPIs. And he said, listen, in my job, I have to look at so many different aspects of business. And if I start getting into each of these pieces to try and understand the nitty-gritties, that means I'm putting my focus in the wrong place. So as long as these 2 media KPIs are all right, as long as 2 creative KPIs are all right, as my 2 distribution KPIs are all right, and my pricing KPIs are all right, I know now that the business is doing well. And wherever the KPI falls, I need to focus my attention there to correct it. I think for me, that was the one big learning that came out of China. You know, you come back to the country and people are getting into data on every slide, chasing the smallest nitty-gritty number. Yes, CTR has happened this, VTR has happened this, but it is all inconsequential because as long as you're very clear on what the important business point is, you can go ahead and do it. So that for me was really the simplistic way of working was really fantastic learning there.
Why? So why is it so complicated? Okay, I'm also confused right now. Media, you're saying only 2 KPIs. These are business KPIs or media KPIs, number one. Why is it so complicated to come down to 2? And reverse question, I want to track 5. I want to track all of this. Why is that wrong? I'm pushing you, Gautam.
No, absolutely fair. And I think this is why I brought up this anecdote. I think in all our attempts to, understand what is happening, we tend to get lost in the sea of information that's available. And now, even as things become more and more data, and in the last 5 years since I've come back from China, if anything, this availability of data has accelerated to an nth degree. But this amount of data, you can look at it and you can deep dive into it, but is it affecting business? You need to understand that. And each of your partners needs to be pushed to say, what is that KPI that you are working on that is driving my business? In the end, that's the outcome, right? So if I do 5 and all 5 cannot be driving business, within those 5, 3 of them are driving the other 2. And that's leading to a business outcome that is this thing. All 5 will never be that there are 5 things in media that I can do that all will drive business separately. They are either interlinked or you can combine them into 2 or 1 and simplify things. I think the question in this is keep it simple, stupid is right at the top of that, right? So
give a few examples, no, Gautam. Give a few examples.
So let's and I think I mentioned some of these. So let's say let's look at a typical dashboard that goes out to a client, right? Nowadays agencies build big dashboards. They upload all the data, everything in one huge repository somewhere, and people click onto it. Half the people don't even go and bother look at it, but the other half who go and look at it are looking at reams of data, right? So let's say I do an online campaign. I'm looking at things like view-through rates. I'm looking at click-through rates. I'm looking at traffic. I'm looking at how many completed views. Now, which of these is actually making a difference to my business? Nobody really knows. Nobody's done the work to look at that. And that's exactly what I mean, that when I went to China, the guy said, tell me the 2, which you can tell me where clearly drive business. And I told him, listen, I know reach for sure drives business. And I know competitive activity for sure drives business. So that's 2 things that I can tell you as this thing for one of the media, at least from a perspective. And he said, Outside of this, then I don't want to get, if I'm losing out on any of these two, I will come back to you and say, what do I need to do? But as long as these two are correct, I'm not then going to chase you for the details, which is exactly the thing in digital planning also, that as long as enough people are seeing the creative, and that's your objective, what's the point in chasing metrics like, oh, I have so many people click, these people, not enough people are clicking, and so on and so forth. That's, none of those have been worked out to drive your business. And know this many engagements, so on and so forth. None of those work out to saying this drives your business. So if none of these are being validated to be business drivers, why are we uploading all this information? And why is somebody spending so much time going through it when there are probably other key areas in the business that need more attention and fixing? But you are not able to get to that because you are looking at too much information and it's just an overload.
So Gautam, I want to back up one minute. What is really media planning? Why do we need planning? So I can understand there are a lot of media options today. Earlier it was much simpler. There is print, there is TV. Now you got digital, you got outdoor, and on digital and you got internet, you got mobile, you got many, many different options. So what is the role? Why do we need a planner?
Absolutely. So I think, and frankly, I think our roles are, we kind of trying to, show why we reason for existence. And so we kind of tell a lot of things, but in its essence, it's quite simplistic. What the job of a media planner is to make sure that the consumer is getting the message that the brand wants to put out there at the most efficient way possible, right? So as many consumers as I can expose to the communication at the lowest cost possible. It's as simple as that. We don't necessarily need to make it any more complicated than that, right? And in that, what kind of communication, all those are decided between the brands, the creative agencies, content partners, and things like that. But in its essence, the media planner is just trying to figure a way to get that communication across as efficiently as possible, right? At this point, though, I would like to mention that while there is efficiency, there is also a measure which we call as effectiveness, which we also try and keep an eye on. So is it driving enough people? And that's effectiveness and efficiency. And if I may, I'll give you a very good example of this one. So take a hive of bees, right? So a hive of bees, and in nature, this is a fantastic example. I think a hive of bees, when it's searching for food sources, all bees are supposed to go out and look for flowers, for honey, and collect that and bring it and put it in the hive, right? However, what happens in a proper hive is that large percentage of bees already go out and search for that honey, get it and bring it back. But there is a certain section of bees which go out at random. They don't go to the source that exists. They go out without any direction and they come back. Now, for me, this is the discussion, right? Those random bees are what is called effectiveness. Without them, you will never find future sources of food. The other bees are the efficient part of it. They know exactly where the source is. They will go pick up that and bring it back. And so they're extremely efficient. But if they continue to do that, that source will expire and your hive will die. So that's why nature itself has built in one thing called effectiveness, which is increase your brace, reach out to more areas, find more food stuff. But other side is efficiency, where you kind of go and get as quickly as possible and keep the hive alive. And this is the two aspects in media that a media planner is supposed to look at, right? How do I grow my business at the same time most cost effectively? So that's really media planning and a simple role of what a media planner does in the world of bees. Yeah.
So what you're trying to say is that one, I have to get the audience at the cheapest cost and figure out where can I get new audience. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, absolutely, Jayant. And I think that's one of the things that we struggle to get across. It's at times, because of chasing efficiencies and because of information data available and so on and so forth, what we kind of chase is how efficiently can I go after audiences. And so let's say I have to get 100 people to buy my product. I will go after those 100 thinking, okay, these are the 100 only I need, thinking of this is today's business. But there is tomorrow you will need to grow from 100 to 200. You need to lay those seeds today. Otherwise tomorrow your business will die. And that's where it becomes, that narrow segment of going after the 100 people only and trying to convert just those 100 without looking at the broader audience which is sitting out there. How do I reach out to them is an argument that is, very, very tough to push through. Most people are only focused on the efficient part of it and not going into the effectiveness area and how do I broaden this. And this is very typical of the discussions we have on things like why should I go on a broad media? What is the advantage of going on broad media versus why should I not do targeting through digital and things like that. So that's really the discussions that keep us up at night, is trying to tell clients that it is important to go mass media, and there are audiences there who may not be audiences now in the next hour, but they will be in the next 3 hours and in the next 5 hours and so on and so forth. But yeah, that's really the reasoning behind effectiveness and efficiency.
So Gautam, if I use a sort of framework I apply in what I do in Velvet Rope marketing, there are the best customers, which are your today's best customers.
Yes.
Then there is the long tail. So the bees going out and trying to get newer ones, or your existing ones who are not maybe as up to the full potential. And then there is the next. Okay, that's actually the bees going out and trying to find new sources of customers. So best, yes, rest, and next.
Yes.
And what you're saying as a media planner, your goal is combine effectiveness with efficiency for today's audiences and tomorrow's audiences.
Absolutely right, and that takes a nice segue into something else I think is a very, very relevant piece in this. That if you go after people who are currently consuming or the likeliest consumers, they are probably already consuming your brand in some ways, and they are what we call as loyal audiences or loyal users of your product, right? And this I think I'm a small fish in this whole piece, but there's a brilliant book by a guy called Byron Sharp, written. He's a professor from an Australian university. The book took marketing by storm about 8 years back. I think all companies, whether it's Coke, P&G, Unilever, shifted their way of marketing because of this book. Sadly, most marketing people haven't read it, and that's a really big gap I think in marketing in today's world, because this is technically a marketing textbook that has superseded Kotler. And it's not something that is really read well enough. But in that book, with all the research available to that guy from Coke, Pepsi's, with their internal data, he has conclusively proven that you cannot build a loyalty for a brand. The loyalty is just a function of how many users you have. So the larger your user base, the more loyal your user base. The smaller your user base, the less loyal your user base. You cannot increase loyalty or go after loyalty. And this he's highlighted with iconic brands like Apple, Harley Davidson, you name any of them. All of them were proven that their loyalty was absolutely in relation to their market share. So if Apple in the US has high market share, they have high loyalty. In Asia, if they have low market share, they have low loyalty. So it's proven and a fact and multiple case studies. But that's really, even in today's world, we have to keep pushing people to say, guys, let's not just go after our existing buyers. Retargeting works up to a point, but without the scale of getting new audiences every day in today's, tomorrow's, and next month and next year's consumers, you cannot grow a brand to become big, because that's the only route of growing a brand. That is by driving completely new audiences to your business. So yeah, so that framework is absolutely valid. You have to go after the next and later.
So it is very, very controversial what you're saying. Okay, loyalty and all that, and this trying to get new users. Now let me look at a life of a everyday brand manager. Everyday brand manager has to say, I want to build an X audience. I know this is my audience.
Yes.
Give it to me in this format. Now, if you come and tell me, no, 1 second, put a certain money on the future. Ek to number one in 3 years, I don't know which company, which brand.
Yeah.
What am I going to do? I hope I'm not killing my own job. But in this situation, and there is this is one part of it. How do you address that? Is there a framework? Well, how much money do you put behind effectiveness versus efficiency? Because I want to look at data and I want to drive efficiency. And efficiency is a beautiful game to fight.
Yes.
And at the same time, you're saying me, 1 second, give me a certain budget that is random. Okay.
Yes.
Now, how does this work, and how do you expect me to react to it, and how do you pitch for me any examples that you've done in life, etc., and some great brands that you worked with that have heard you and been proven, right?
Yeah. So I think this I think, Jamit, is the toughest part of our conversations, right? Because we are asking people to look at the current data and take a behavior which will pay in a longer term. And this is the gap, I think, between CEOs and CMOs. Because in case of CMO's case, what he's looking at is to say, okay, give me the money and I will drive business in 12 months. The CEO or a CFO who's looking at this is looking at the money now and saying, show me the case for it in today's world. The good thing is that, especially in today's e-commerce driven world, it is possible to make fair amount of estimates of what your long-term revenue are going to be. And a good example of that is one of our e-commerce clients who have essentially decided to go a route of looking at mass audiences on a continuous basis, right? At one time, it was we would do mass media on burst level, and then for some time sustain with just retargeting people, saying, oh, I created a base. But the thing was that we could show them that 3 months or 6 months down the line, that those people who came due to that one burst campaign, they converted and they've stayed with you for some time. And unless you continue to do this, you are not going to scale the base. And with every mass media campaign, you are seeing the base increase. So there is a need to be able to calculate, estimate that number. And we do that from a scaling perspective when we build out our plans. And that's really important to be able to take that to a CFO and tell him that, listen, this is not just money going down the drain for today. Here's what it will pay out in 3 months, and here's what it will pay out in 6 months. And at some level, Jaimin, actually people know that they need to go after a broader audience. The crazy thing about it is they choose to do it on events which are very, very mass reach, but they end up paying a bomb for. So let me give you an example, my pet example of Indian Premier League here, right?
So I was waiting for this one to come up. I was waiting. Call it impact property.
Yeah.
Now go ahead.
Yes. So let's say impact. Now, no. So the marketer understands that I need to go after broad audiences. Now the choice they make here is that if broad audience means then I have to go after something that everybody will see, including myself, my CEO, my CFO. I don't want to take the risk of this going now into a program like Big Boss, which my CEO and CFO will not watch, and it is still mass, but the quality of that program is not very good. So IPL is a short thing. कुछ भी नहीं है तो let me take high definition IPL. ये तो at least boss लोग को दिख जाएगा, plus तो काफी mass हो जाएगा. And that's where you're looking at getting fresh audiences. So at the back of his mind, and there is already this inherent thing that I have to go after new audiences. That is not that people are not aware of it. But the strange part is that people expect then that when you invest so much money on a property, that is going to give you ROI, which is impossible. When you're going to invest on something that the cost per reach is 20 times the regular price, it is never going to give you ROI. Even if it performs 3-4 times better, the ROI is going to be terrible, right? So that's for me the thing that you look at it from a perspective of saying that, okay, so if I'm going to build brand, get new audiences, can I do that efficiently? First of all, is there an efficient way of getting these new audiences rather than going and throwing buckets of money on the same audience by getting them through a platform which is so premium rather than getting them through a lower cost platform, right? So that's really the reason that in a lot of cases this fails, that a client may decide, okay, let me go and do KBC and Kaun Banega Crorepati, everybody will watch in this country. And he ends up paying a huge premium for it. And say his business grows 2 times, but because he paid 10 times the premium, it didn't work. And then next time you go to the CFO said, dude, this TV ROI is horrible. So let's not even attempt to do this. But you have set yourself up for failure. Essentially, you have never started with testing, control, figuring out what's working, how much is working. A great example of a client, and I think I can name them also. It's a commerce client on education. And the way they have started, it's a US-based client, but the way they have started is they said, let's start really small. I'll give you $200,000. Tell me how efficiently you can do mass media for me. Second campaign, $450,000, and so on and so forth. And then continuous activity. So very clear that at the most efficient, what's my ROI? And then as I scale, because I can't get reach unless I buy high platforms later on, I may buy the more expensive ones. But the challenge is that if you set yourself up for failure right at the beginning, it's going to be very difficult for you to find ways to bring that back to management and say, here's the funding, please give me more money. This is what the business I got, based on what you gave me. And if it failed in the first go, then there's no big property not going to do anything, because even at the low spending level and the ROI level where it was okay, it is not working. It's not going to work at a bigger level, man. No chance.
So Gautam, I want to probe you a little bit more on the impact property point that you said. Now, what you're saying is that it's basically the problem in impact properties like IPL or KBC is that while they have a large audience, it's pretty much the same audience which is coming back every day and watching it. So your ad is going to be shown to them probably hundreds of times. And after a few times, the effectiveness of that ad is really not there. Is that sort of the problem with impact properties?
So that's part of the problem, I think. So for example, and for all we like to say about it, let's say the IPL actually reaches 35 to 40% of the Indian consumer, right? That's the total IPL. If I buy all possible spots, I'll reach 40% of this thing. We as advertisers and buy a certain number, and we'll cover probably 30% of people. Now you reach 30% of people every day, day in, day out. So your effectiveness anyway of that creative, all that is falling. But I think the more bigger point on this one, Rajesh, is that we are paying really, really bucket loads of money for that, right? And like I said, so if I was getting a cost per lead from television at 5 rupees from regular television, the IPL cost per lead is close to 500 rupees, right? Because even if IPL gets me 3x the leads, I'm just paying so much of a premium. And that is what I call PLU planning, which is we are planning for people like us. We are not planning for our audience, right? It's a very PLU heuristic, which because we don't understand the media, we don't understand that, okay, TV already has an audience definition that allows me to target premium people. Maybe I don't need to get into the premium or the most expensive one in the first go. So that's really the thinking behind impact, actually.
But so I'm sure you've also bought IPL, you also bought KBC. There are ways in which it can be effective, no?
So yes, and I think, Jamit, I think the thing to consider there is that what are the budgets that I have, and when and where it doesn't become necessary to drive people to do IPL or to drive people to do, impact properties as such. So that space, what happens is that in a lot of our clients' cases, we do recommend impact properties, but that's only when we feel we have enough budget to do one, justice to them. Second is that we need the reach that those impact properties get us, right? So for example, let's say I'm doing a very large campaign during IPL. It's going to be difficult for me to scale beyond a point if I'm not on IPL. So if I have the budgets, I scale, I spend at the top level of my reach curves and things like that. I know that, okay, this is the property that I need to buy. I will build quick reach. But even there, we would be very careful on how much you invest. It just doesn't make sense to invest for a single brand, single creative for 55 days to show people the same creative. People, I don't know at the end of it what they will do, but I don't think it'll be anything good for the brand.
You keep showing users as the same audience again and again. It probably makes sense to go out, come back, stuff like that.
Yeah, I think so. I think people have figured some of that out. I mean, I think people have. You can see now that as IPL seasons have gone and gone one after another, people now plan multiple creatives over the campaign. It is not the one Oppo ad that started at the beginning of the campaign, ended at the end of the campaign. Nowadays, you can see whether it is PhonePe or whatever, everybody does multiple creatives that keep changing. So at least it's fresh because they know that this is driving 30, 40 times frequency. This ad is going to be seen. There's no point in like spending behind that. So that's one of the areas that people are getting smarter at. But I think a lot of this is driven by, like I said, it's the scale that impact property brings. And the other piece, which is my other pet peeve, is that it is because of what a lot of people see competition doing. And that's I think for me, that's one of the biggest pieces.
If he's on IPL or if he's on this show, or how does that work?
Yeah, and to be fair, I mean, that's a lot of it driven by the media planning community itself, right? We go and scare clients. You know, your competition is doing this. You need to spend so much and so on and so forth. But there is a balance always to manage that. And sometimes to learn from competition is not necessarily the right thing. I've told you this example before also, and I think it's a fantastic anecdote. Frankly, it goes something like this. There's if you take a million monkeys, give them $1,000 each to invest in the stock market, right? And every day, some monkeys will win, some will lose. They will put the money, some will put it on winners, some will put on losers. And every day, the people who have lost, every day the monkeys who have lost, you send them home. So over a month's period, in the end, there'll be one of the monkeys who would have invested every day correctly, and they ended up winning billions of dollars, right? And then you go and analyze, what did this monkey eat? Where did he sit? How does he walk? What does he shit? All sorts of things about the monkey. And then you say, these are the lessons from winners, so this guy must be doing something right. Let's really replicate what he's doing. He's been able to grow share by 10%. And so it's important to be on this property. Now, looking at that, we all know that this is possibilities, probabilities. There's so many things that go into it, right? And there's a superb book called The Halo Effect. I think Phil Rosenberg, he says that marketing is not about 100% guarantee about anything. There is no surety in what you're doing, because there is no one thing that you're doing at one point of time. There are multiple interventions you're doing. What best you can do is that on everything you nudge the probability of your winning slightly, and then you will come up in front. It's not like there is a silver bullet there. There is not. You have to nudge every piece, this thing, give yourself the best chance to win. And that's how you're going to, cross that hurdle. So yeah, so impact and competition are two things that, will sell anything. They say that if you really want to sell anything to clients, first you can show them a shiny new thing. So tell them, oh, here, Instagram stories have come. If you're not on this, boss, you're not doing anything. So there's no bigger fool than somebody who wants to run after shiny new stories. That's the easiest thing to sell. Second, you tell them, boss, your competition is doing all these things, you better do it. So those two are almost surefire ways of spending, getting a client to spend. And if the client doesn't spend after those two, those are the guys you want to work with. They are the guys who are really thinking through it. They're asking the questions and they're saying, okay, so now you tell me, I don't want to do what they're doing. I don't want to chase anything like this. You tell me, how is this impacting my business? And that, Jamit, are the people you really want to work with.
I agree. And the agency that does not show me competition benchmarks at the start is the agency I want to work with. So just give me a presentation which I can email my boss, but not tell me what the hell should I do for my brand, for the KPIs that impact me. So just pushing that, let me push that from impact. One of the things that you and me have had various conversations, and we even have an A/B test on TV, and we measured it, and we did something funny, and we realized, Rajesh, I'll just give you this little bit of a case in one of my avatars. We did advertising, we got a bump, and after the bump, you see the end. The story ends, and you're a little better than before.
Yes.
Then we did massive analytics, and we took exactly the ads and the spots and the channels which will give you maximum impact. So we got 50% of the bump at, I think, 20% of the spend or something like that, right, Gautam?
Yes.
Absolutely. We did this massive, you and me did this. And then itna mehnat karne ke baad, one day Gautam calls me and says, ye sab theek hai. Let's do it another way. He said, what way? Let's do it via data. I'm like, okay, what are we doing right now? Gautam, I don't want to steal your thunder, but we did an interesting thing and we looked at data. And I'll give you let me throw it up to the audience so that they know what they're in for. When we did it the Gautam Surath way, we got an upside, which was comparable, but we got a tail, which was incomparable. Normally you would come and go down. This tail went crazy. Gautam, give us this case study.
Yeah, so I think this was and served as learning for a lot of our future campaign. I think this is the other piece that I find is very strange, right? So like working with a lot of e-commerce related companies, and when you work with them, you meet the clients, you meet the marketing head, and they're all talking data. So they're like, okay, this many visits, and this is our cost per visit and benchmarks. And when it comes to offline and mass media, all that data seems to be kind of thrown out the window, right? We saw some of this impact discussions and all that. So what happens is that when you go take a data-led plan, and this is the thing that we talked about, right? So here I am going after males, and the agency is coming back and saying, okay, here's a plan. Here's 50% of the reach is coming from kids channels, and this is what is going to reach males. So as typically everybody is like, and this I go through with every client. It's still a part of all my plans, and every client I bring, they ask me, what? I'm trying to sell a car. Why are you putting me on kids channels? Or I'm trying to sell insurance. Why are you putting me on kids channels? I don't want to be there. As a genre, I want to remove. So I tell them, listen, dude, there are some apparently fathers who are sitting and watching this stuff with their kids. They may not be paying attention to the television, to the programming. God knows, they may be. I watched a lot of cartoons even now. But they may not be watching the content, but they're definitely bored and they'll watch the ad. And it looks like that's the numbers that are coming. So we as well go with this data. So like Jamin, in our case, it went through seamlessly, right? We tested it and like 70% of our reach was coming from kids. It worked fantastic. The campaign jumped and all the numbers are fine. And we continue to use it here on. And I use it still for a lot of clients who are open to it. But it's a challenge to convince people. I think there is, these are the things that I think are what we call our thinking in terms of where we let the data part of our brain sit at the back. And we just feel that, okay, this is not the kind of place or the kind of thing I want to be doing. And let's stay away from that. So those are the places where lots of data helps you make clear cases of what's working, what's not. The case that Jamit, you were talking about helps me now, even now, tell clients, this is the mix that you need to be operating in order to, make sure that that you'll get the best bang for your buck. And to take that a step further, there are many cases where clients ask us, should I even do television? Should I even do print? And why not? Why should I do television over YouTube and things like that? And the sad part of it is that because of the way that the industry is set up, I think a lot of the conversations around how to do media are led by people like Facebook and YouTube, which is such a sad thing in the market where a vendor is dictating how a client should spend. And the role that the agency is playing has been sidelined, partly because the agency is mistaken also, but sidelined because now you're no longer having the right conversation. Now if the client has decided, I have made a great 30-seconder and this is what is going to drive traffic, YouTube will come and say, no, you have to make 6 of this. Only 6-seconder will work on my platform. And then a lot of the clients make a 6-seconder. But if that 6-seconder is that effective, put it on television also. No. On television, we will run the 30 because that's the most effective. But on YouTube and Facebook, I will make 10-seconders. Now, this is our job to go and tell clients that here's what we need to do is you go test it. Run the 30 on Hotstar, which is a platform that allows the 30 to be completely viewed. And then you see what's the validity of it. But these ones are very, very difficult to have because the narrative is now sitting with different people. And the narrative is what is well set in most marketers' heads that, okay, now I have to make a made for YouTube creative. But the fact is, it is not a made for YouTube creative. There is a creative made to convince consumers. Now, whether that is a 5-seconder or a 30-seconder should dictate where you put the ad, not the other way around. But that's the tough convincing that it takes to get people either to do kids channels or to do certain platforms, even if you have the data with you. And that's why these mental models are so difficult to break, even with data.
So actually, let me push you there. If I see getting the peak is still what you're saying. One of the interesting things we learned is the tail, the longer tail. And we both looked at the data and we realized there was a certain interesting thing that we had done. And for the first time in my life, I understood, probably I'm too dumb to have got it earlier, is this beautiful term called spillover.
Yeah.
Explain that for the layman, for the average marketing guy, and explain that why it happens. And it's not just a kids channel. You recommended, and I remember going to my CEO and the co-founder saying, my job is on the line. We're going to a Bhojpuri channel for Delhi males. And he's looking at me, I'm looking at him, saying, Gautam ne bola hai, abhi theek hai. So this This spillover thing, explain. It's not that easily understood by most. It's not intuitive. And why is it so difficult? And how does one plan for it?
So I think it's a beautiful topic, Jamit. I think, and I'll use another very, very common term to talk about when I talk of spillover, right? So my most favorite term in the last 5 years, millennials. So millennials are like that golden pot under the rainbow, right? You manage to target them, you will get the business. However, 75% of the spending comes outside of millennials. They don't have the money to buy anything, but still we go and make everything for millennials. So let's talk about millennials. So let's say we are going after millennials and that's my core TG, and I want them to buy a car, which is entry level car. And that's what we've done for some of our clients. So core target is millennials. I'm going to do a campaign. We're going to be very, very focused. Let's pick up youth centric channels, little bit of sport and things like that. And we'll cover all these people and we'll get all the millennials. Now, what happens in the real world is that when you go after millennials, okay, so I reached, let's say I did YouTube, I took exactly 20, 40 years. I targeted the hell out of them. All of them saw my creative and this thing. In the end, my business degrew 10%. Now, there is a reason why that business degrew 10%. Because in theory, a generation like a millennial will never contribute more than 30% of your business. Actually, when you look at the hardcore data, 70% of the business is sitting for people above 40 in a lot of cases, people who have the money to go and buy. So yes, you can do the, what you call it as the profiling of the audience, but more the imagery of the audience can be millennial. But you can never ever target only the millennials because 70% of your business is spillover audiences. And those spillover audiences, if you don't target, you get too niche and too focused on the millennial, then your baby boomers, blah, 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 the guys who would buy your product and not reached, you will actually see a degrowth in the business. And that's why it is very, very important to have a clear distinction between your creative targeting and your media targeting. They have to be absolutely different. And that's why media needs to come a little bit earlier to tell them that, guys, even though you may have whatever profile and however you have defined Ram, Sita, whatever names you have given them, those people, they can be whatever you want as imagery. But as a media planner, I'm going to tell you that my audience is going to be 20 to 55 or 20 to 45, 50. It covers 70% of the business. I will plan only on that audience that covers 70% and not anything smaller. Because while it was okay in the old world where mass media went to everybody, the targeting problem in the new world of being able to laser target means that you will never reach enough people to sell your product. And that's a very, very, very big pitfall when we look at, budget allocations and media planning's effectiveness. Because you will say on YouTube, I want 22 to 40. Great. So YouTube can understand 72 most of the times. 70% of the time they can understand 22 to 40 and they will give you 22 to 40. But that's 30% of your business. And without realizing, you have only reached 30% of the people in the business and some percentage of them, and your business is lost. And I think that's where the power of television, and that's what we saw, Jamit, is that even though I'm really looking at males 25 to 40 and I'm making the plan on them, I know that is going to older males, it is going to mothers, it is going to younger males, it's going to that 18-year-old who is taking insurance, it's going to the 55-year-old who is renewing insurance.
It is being streamed it is being broadcast and consumed in Dibrugarh in Assam or somewhere else from Visakhapatnam while you may be targeting Delhi.
Absolutely. And I think, again, I'll come back to the point that you made, Jamit, is that mental models, right? The guy who is, just because he's watching Bhojpuri channel sitting in Bombay, doesn't mean that he's not got a bike and he will not take insurance. It is just that he just prefers that content because he's brought up on that. He has come from last month from UP to take a job as a delivery guy here. He still may watch that kind of stuff. Now, we are not the ones sitting here to decide whether this guy will buy insurance, not buy insurance. Today, he may not buy, day after he will buy. The point is that in my definition, when I look at it from a creative lens, in terms of the creatives that I'm making, he may not fit my mental model. What I'm looking at is a guy who's very tech savvy, blah, 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 going to office every day by bike, maybe rides a Harley Davidson for all I know. But essentially, when my media plan is made, it needs to cover that guy. And that's the spillover audience. They will keep coming a longer tail. They will say, oh, this is much easier. I can do it. They will understand the creative. All those will happen. You may have to regionalize the creative. if that's the kind of channels you're going in. But that's simply part of the task you do, because spillover is that important for you. I was just looking at our client, the Jeep business, and the Jeep is a 25 lakh plus car. It is obviously, people are saying, oh, 6 metro, 7 metro is the core focus on. But 55% of my business comes from small town. Yes, 50% is 6 metro, 7 metro, but that each town is 1 car, 2 car. But how many of those towns are there? There's so many of them. And if 50% of my business is sitting there, if I take print in 6 cities and say, boss, I've cracked it, it's not going to help. And this is the thing that spillover audiences takes care of. It is not just television. And Jamit, we have not had a discussion on print before, but there is a reason why we take all editions of a newspaper versus taking only a city edition. Because the cost is roughly same, but I will reach to these spillover audiences to one city, small cities, this paper goes to. And I will convert those people. And that's why you see the longer tail, which is that over a period of time, more people from different parts of country, language, socio-economical strata, they will all come into your fold and then grow your brand, if not today, but definitely tomorrow. So that's really the concept, I think, of spillover audiences, which I think gets lost somewhere in this whole thing of targeting. And a final anecdote on that one, I think, is one of the companies to learn marketing from always, and because I spent so many years working on that client, is Procter & Gamble. I think if I've seen a company which has records of what has worked, what has not worked, and not repeating any mistakes they've done in the past, that's that company. They have absolute guidelines on what to do and what not to do. And quite famously, about 4 or 5 years back, they went out and told the world that we have stopped doing any targeting on Facebook. We are opening up our Facebook this thing to only demographic and geographic, which is basically to cover the country. What we do not want are interest buckets, targeting buckets, this, that, because we are not appealing to somebody who is in that interest bucket. That person is not defined by that interest today. They'll have other interests, so on, so forth, and so on, so forth behaviors. The minute we get targeted, we don't grow. We are going to remove all targeting. And so to date on Facebook, they do absolutely no targeting, which is totally opposite of what most of my other clients do on Facebook, right? Because on Facebook, the richness of data means, okay, let me look at somebody who is riding a bike right now, checking his mobile phone, and maybe I can show him an ad as he's driving to buy some insurance. So those kind of things are available, but this is an argument against that you need to go much broader to grow business in a longer term.
So Gautam, if I were to look at it a little differently, in terms of the trends, I mean, you're basically saying that while the media platforms have become much wider, yeah, some of the basics basically in media planning are still the same. They don't change. So if you were to go meet a CEO tomorrow, and of course it'll depend on industry, if you say there are 3 key points that you have to keep in mind for your media planning exercise, what would they be? That these are 3 fundamentals. You can't forget these. What would they be?
So I think I would limit that to very, very simplistic ones, I think, Rajesh. So the first thing I would always say is that the first principle of media is about reach and reaching all category buyers. I think that's the most critical one. If you don't have the eye on, am I reaching enough people for it to make business sense? And then only you can look at anything else in media, right? So for me, that's the critical one, and there is nothing else that will beat that space. So first, make sure that you're reaching as many category buyers as you can, and that's the piece that you need to this thing. Second, for me, is that keep it very, very simple. Once you put the reach metric, look at those metrics which you're tracking, and media is not very complicated. Make sure that you've got the right metrics, and that's the point that I made right at the beginning, that don't get too much into the nitty-gritties of media, into levels of things that are not going to help. So here's a classic example. A lot of my client meetings up to CEO level are about, should I be taking the spot on this program or on that program? In the long term of this thing, that is absolutely nothing for the business, because it's a 0.03% reach difference here and there, and neither is it going to make a single spot going to make any difference to your business. So imagine an organization where through the line, and because the CEO is doing that, imagine the amount of time the other people are spending on it. Imagine the effort the organization is putting on thing which is going to make absolutely no difference. And I think that's where I would say is that put your KPIs very clearly. You have agencies to track your KPIs, task your agencies with that, and just leave it alone. As long as your KPIs are being met, your costs are being balanced, don't spend company time on chasing those as the second piece that I would advise from an overall perspective. And the third and final thing I think is to look at things a little bit balanced between short term and long term. As we see them today, things are becoming more and more short term, and there is a pressure that is natural now because of and my client calls it QSQT. It is quarter se quarter tak. I think as most people live in by these quarterly results and how things are working on the business, we become very short term. Even when people are presenting a little bit 6-month window saying this will work over a 6-month period, people are not very keen to put money behind it. And I think as a top client, you need to be able to break up your budgets and saying, here's the 80% that's going to drive my this quarter's business, but I need to look at the remaining 20%, at least which drives 6 months to 9. And there can be data for both, and the support can be given. But the problem is that if you get too short term, then you're not really giving your chance for your brand to grow in the future. And that's really the 3 pieces of advice I would give. Of course, I've given a lot of information on impact and things like that, but I think those are mental models. I wouldn't deal with that for every client, but these 3 which I talked about are true for almost every client. I think those are the key basics that we need to do as media people, right? And which brings me to my final one, which is research. I think less and less clients do research now. I think it's ad hoc research looked at on the online and things like that. And it brings to me the quote. This is a very nice quote from Ogilvy. He said, I think that most people use research like a drunkard uses a lamppost, more for support rather than for illumination, So for me, it's a beautiful line. I think less and less we use research for getting us good thoughts. What should we do? What's working? What's not working? More just, okay, where is it supporting what I'm doing? And then we go with it. So if there's anything to add to that 3 points, I would say research is a big one, though it's not technically media, but I think it's an as important part of media as a part of marketing.
So Gautam, what you're trying to say is fire the media guy who comes with a PPT and embrace the guy who comes with an Excel sheet.
Well, that's a very interesting way of putting it, Jamit. I think so. Yeah, maybe not exactly in those words. I go with a lot of PPT, so I'm like a little scared to support that. Yeah, so you embrace the people who are talking business. I think, Jamit. The challenge I find, and it may be both ways, I think, is that a lot of cases we go to clients with what is the impact on the business, and the client is the one who's saying, forget that. Let's talk about where am I going to take this spot, and which is the scary part, I think. So I would say as a person who's sitting on the other side, I think the marketing, the focus needs to be on the agencies which are going to talk your business. And a lot of the marketers do that. 90% of them talk business. I think even in the pitches that we do regularly, I have found far more traction in the pitch when we focus on the core business metrics. Of course, ideas, all those play a role. But if you focus on the business, you get much better engagement from clients. They are much more interested in seeing how you can partner with them. And that's really the way it should be. I think the smart clients all know what they want from an agency. I think it's really quite easy to see from the first presentation from a media planner whether this is a person you want to work with a long term or they are not. So that's why always the selection criteria is first on the presentation and then later on the Excel. And here Excel, I think, Jamit, I mean by rates and negotiations. So that's the difference between my Excel and your Excel.
Yeah, so I think when we finally got that talmel and we finally were figuring it out, I remember earlier media planning and etc. We used to we used to choose channels, we used to have a presentation and everything. And finally, I think when we figured how we work with each other, we used to send an Excel sheet. I used to open it, look at the final GRP numbers, etc. and say, this looks good. Is there any way to max it? No, I think this is mota mota. Okay, done. So in that sense, it was the perfect match of minds and Excel sheets then won over the PPTs.
Absolutely. And Jayamit, so that's the point that you're making, which is exactly what I said earlier, right? That once you've decided these are the two KPIs, and you know that your agency is going to focus and drive that KPI, which is relevant to business, all you're checking is that, can I improve this number a little bit more? And you're focused on that. And that's the discussion we have. And it saves everybody time. And you know yourself that you have so many other things to look at. I'm saying marketing is more about pricing, distribution, relative pricing, lots of things that go into it. Apart from media, media is a very, very small, it may be an important part, but overall communication itself is a small part of marketing, right? And when you look at all the things, when you put those all together, try and spend as less time on it as you can and still get the best out of it. That's, I think, the best way to do media actually.
So Gautam, when you look ahead, what are the one or two key trends that you're seeing? What do you look forward to? I mean, people talk of sort of hyper targeting and all kinds of hyper personalization, omni-channel personalization, all kinds of terms which are there, which come out. Are we moving more and more towards one-to-one targeting? But it's really, when you look at mass media, it's a very different play that is there. So what are the key things to look forward to in the next few years?
Yeah. And Rajesh, very, very good question. I think tough one to tell today. I think I'm seeing winds blowing both ways. I think we are seeing people coming to embrace personalization and narrow targeting and things like that. But at the other side, there are people like Byron Sharp and so on and so forth who are pushing marketers the other way. So I think it's going to be an interesting time, I think, as we go forward. On top of all of this is obviously the policies that are sitting on privacy, which are pushing things in directions which are more mass media rather than they are personalized media. So as consumers give less and less data, as Google and Facebook are held more accountable, we might find that people will slowly get their data to be more private. And that means that targeting will, as we know it today, might actually come down, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because other side people are saying that it's not really working. So I think this will keep evolving, but is there going to be a sudden shift and dramatic changes? I don't think so. I think we will find that even the more digital media will behave a lot like offline, and offline will start getting more and more available to give targeting signals. But as things evolve, smart marketing companies will figure out what's the best way to use each of these. And so for me, the basics of media planning will not change. And I think Bezos put it so nicely. He said that, yes, things are changing rapidly and all that, but build your business on things that don't change rather than the things that are changing, and you'll do better in the long term. So I think media is one of those. I think we talk a lot about dramatic pace of change, this, that, bit exaggerated, actually quite a bit exaggerated. Focus your efforts, I think, on the things that are not going to change. And like some of those we talked about today, reach is not going to change. It's always going to be important, right? People have to see your brand to go and buy it and know it. And so focus on those will remain. And so for marketers, I think don't really get carried away by the shiny new thing. And then you are in good hands to navigate the future. Whatever happens in the future and whatever changes happen, the basics will always hold you in good stead.
Just to push that point just to its logical conclusion is fundamentally what you're saying, it's the funnel. If you're at the top of the funnel, your objective is to get as many people in. And that is therefore the concept of reach. If you know that somebody is spilled off the funnel and he's towards the end of the funnel, narrow targeting may not necessarily be bad if it's at the tip of the funnel, where you know it's absolutely relevant, or he's gone out and therefore you're retargeting him, or you know very specifically that this is what I want. But as a marketer, it's very important to know whether you're on the top or at the bottom of the funnel and the role of media. And then you use the shiny new thing accordingly. Or as somebody very eloquently put it, TV is the new TV.
Okay. Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think 100% agree on that one. I think the only piece I would add to that is that the funnel by its nature exists, and it works very well because it still sits, people still sit in those buckets. And today what you know is, okay, I know this person has been exposed to communication, they've not taken any action. and I can nudge them further, right? And I have capabilities to do that. And that where you can, you should definitely do it. The other thing we also need to bear in mind is that while we think of media as top of funnel, middle funnel, bottom funnel, we also know from our campaigns that when you do television, not just your new base, but your existing base also moves. And so it is a fact that it's not just the top of funnel, it is moving metrics through the funnel. Same thing with digital. You do a properly full-fledged YouTube mass reach campaign, it will work like television works. And that's why TV is the new TV. All of these will work. The thing you have to be careful is that when you get too narrow, are you not able to measure the outcomes and this thing? And what you are seeing, are they people who are already likely to be? This is a very, very interesting piece of work that's been done on retargeting, Jamil, and maybe we share that separately. But basically, when they did a test of people who were retargeted, and they broke up their user base into two types. People that the whole database was of people who were already consumers. They were looking at retargeting them. So half of them they retargeted, half they did not retarget. In the end, the conversion rates were same. The thing is that in that retargeting, you are already targeting people who are anywhere likely to convert whether you do anything or not. But now, because you did retargeting, you are attributing it to retargeting. And that's where I say that all of this is a lot of people get into too much of data without realizing that at a macro level, it is very difficult to look at that picture and say, hey guys, maybe I am like spending way too much time on getting this 2% lift when I should be like sitting back and thinking of other things per se. And that's the big piece, I think. And proven year after year that creative has the biggest role to play in business lift. But the amount of time we spend on creative versus now how much we are spending on media, I think media is too skewed. We are spending way too much time on media when that can be better balanced by doing better creatives and getting more accurate research on those creatives. So yeah, so I think through the funnel, definitely as you get more information, you can do it, but it tends to get, push you down a rabbit hole, which then you can, coming out is a very tough task.
Allow me to differ with you only mildly.
Yeah.
You're right, creative is important, but as another hippoBrain once also said, LOCTR, list, offer, creative, time and response. And he said, study after study says, list to pehle banao. So get the list right. Then to that list, you get the right creative, which what is the point you're saying. And getting that list is so important. And we often get so consumed with the creative that we don't bother about the list. What is the objective? How big it is? Who do you want to target? And then we look at the creative in isolation from the list. And that's where all the mess starts coming in. So if to my mind, LOCTR, if it's brilliant in DM, why should it not be brilliant in mass?
No, absolutely right, Jamil. And I don't think you're at all disagreeing with me at all. Because when you say list, I say reach. It is for me absolutely the same things. And that's why I say separate the two. List is you will go after whatever you do. Creative, you make whatever you want to make. It may not be for the whole list. The whole list will see it. But what you're showing in the creative may not be relevant to all the whole list, but the whole list needs to see it. And so I don't think you're disagreeing in any which way. For me, that's the way I take it. So whoever that hippoBrain was absolutely right. And it's just that that's why I said, like, there's so many myths in media and marketing and things like that. And some of these, we should like really break those myths and really focus on things that matter. Your hippoBrain is a good one. I told you the other day, there's a before hippoBrain, there was a thing called left brain, right brain. And there's one whole thing around not just marketing, but in general parlance that, there are some people who are left brain, some people are right brain, and so on and so forth. But that also is a myth. It is conclusively proven by medicine that there is no such thing as left brain. Oh, there is left brain, right brain, but there are not left brain people and right brain. For something creative, you use your whole brain. For something data-led, also you use your whole brain. So this is what I mean by saying that sometimes people just tell you stuff, and that's what your belief systems are. And these are the things that become myths, and then we struggle to break those. So yeah, so I think hippoBrain is much easier as a concept.
I think fantastic way to bring our current hippoBrain to a close. I think it's a great line. No more left brain, no more right brain. It's all about the hippoBrain. Gautam? Fantastic conversation. I think it's been an amazing tutorial on media planning. I mean, which we see the ads, but how do companies put those ads? I think you've given us an amazing tutorial today. Thank you very much. Over to you, Jamil.
Yeah, it's been absolutely amazing, Gautam. As always, I always feel Gautam, when Gautam speaks, like his namesake, it's you have to stand next to it and get the blessings from Mr. Buddha himself. It's interesting. Gautam, one last thing, you never named the book that about loyalty, which is that book that we all must read.
Yeah, guys, must read. I can't push this harder. So this is called How Brands Grow. This is Byron Sharp, and it's a university textbook now. But it is must read. Like I said, it's superseded Kotler. Most of the things that Kotler taught us about segmentation, targeting, all those things are gone. And this is the new Bible in the marketing industry. And yeah, so I think there are a few people who read books and few people who say they read books. I think you know those people who read and don't read. And I think for people who read, this is something that I can't. It took me time. It's a tough book to read because it's got lots and lots of data for all these brands, tables, information, this, that, and all that. It took me at least 3 reads before I could really, get my mind through it. But it makes it crystal clear on what we should focus on, what not. So highly recommended, guys. How Brands Grow.
It's interesting. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to read a synopsis of the book and say Gautam has said it is true. The synopsis is also true. So on that note, thanks for being an amazing audience. And it's been an absolutely fascinating session with you, Gautam. I have some big takeaways. There's so many takeaways, but the big thing of getting the list right and getting reach, end of the day, and the efficiency is one thing, but effectiveness is also another thing. These are my top big takeaways. I think it's been great. I hope we've busted enough myths. I hope enough people hate us after this conversation, Gautam. You and me and Rajesh are going to be, I think we have to be careful when we are walking on the road. Somebody's going to knock us over. And thank you for listening to a hippoBrain conversation. You can get us on YouTube. Don't forget to click subscribe and the bell icon, and Spotify or wherever. And after pillaring YouTube for so long, I'm still saying go on to YouTube and get it. Thanks a lot. Thank you.